Hello, today we are going to talk about using augmented reality integration in elementary teaching. Specifically, we're looking at the Measuring app. Our agenda for today includes an overview about augmented reality. What is it? Some related research, specific details about the Measure app, and two lesson plans. The first one is called Find It, and the second one is called Estimate It, and finally a summary and conclusion. Augmented reality defined. Augmented reality is simple. It adds a layer of digital media to your existing viewpoint. You simply use some kind of a device. It could be a phone, it could be an iPad. You open up an app, and within the app, you change how you perceive whatever's in your viewpoint. It permits you to modify your current viewpoint within the application. Using the Measure app is easy to do. The first thing you want to do is find it. If you're using an iPhone or an iPad, you can find it in the Utilities folder. Next, once the app is open, you want to position the dot at the center of the screen along the straight edge of the object. Then you want to tap where you want the measuring to begin. And finally, you can tap to take a photo of your measurement. If you look at the picture on the right hand of the screen, you can see the Measure app was used to measure this plant. When you introduce this lesson plan to your students, you can start by using a ruler or a yardstick, and then explain the various limitations when you're using a ruler or a yardstick to measure objects. I would bring in a measuring tape and show the students how you're measuring using the various tapes. Then show students how to use the Measure app. And then you can have a discussion about how using the Measuring app to measure objects that are larger than a ruler or a yardstick can be helpful. For the lesson plan, I would place the students in pairs, and the students can take turns measuring objects that are nearby, things on their desks such as paper, books, a tabletop, or perhaps a pencil. Then the students could move to larger objects and measure such things as the chairs, the walls in the classroom, the door of the classroom, the windows, and maybe even the dimensions of the actual classroom itself. Then when the students return back after measuring, you can hold a discussion about the applications of measuring in daily activities. Perhaps a discussion about how their family might use measuring tape or rulers in their homes. This is one way to introduce the Measuring app to students and allow students to see the value of using AI technology when measuring items that are larger than a yardstick or a ruler. Let's talk a little bit about building concepts and confidence. And as you use the technology more and more, your confidence will build. When you start using technology in the classroom, it's a good idea to build on the skills that you already have. You'll be practicing new skills, and anytime you teach a new lesson with technology, you want to make sure you're trying it first out with a smaller sample size before you introduce it to the entire classroom. You can test out items such as the internet connection, how the apps work, and the different types of software that you're using in your lesson plan. It's always a good idea to have extra iPads or extra hardware available. Rather than troubleshooting in the middle of a lesson plan, having the extra hardware allows you to swap out the iPads and move ahead with your lesson plan. I also think that working with small groups rather than having students with one-to-one iPads is a good idea. It allows students to collaborate, talk to one another, find support, and have some positive interactions. Let's talk a little bit about the Measuring app. One of the nice things about it is it's readily available on devices and there's no need to download anything. We have one lesson plan idea that you can use in your classroom is something called the Find It lesson plan. And this is where the teacher measures various items in the classroom with specific dimensions and then creates a chart just listing the dimensions. And then the students work together in pairs to try to figure out which objects in the classroom match the dimensions listed in the chart. So this slide here shows an example of a possible measurement chart for the Find It activity. So you can see here the height, the width, and the depth of each of the objects have been completed. And the name of the object is left blank because that's where the students will fill in the names of the objects that they find within the classroom that match the various measurements. As a classroom teacher, you want to consider a few things before you start completing the chart. First, decide on which objects to include in your chart that are easily accessible to all your students. Make sure that the objects are easy to measure. It's easier to measure objects that are square rather than round objects. And I would limit the number of objects that I include in my table, maybe 4 to 5 objects or 8 to 10 objects if the students are a little older. Finally, I would select more than one object that meets the measurement criteria, because this will allow students to see that there is more than one right answer. After the students have completed the measurement activity and completed the chart, you can hold a discussion. In addition to the discussion, you could also include a journal writing activity or a reflection, where the students write about what they did. They can include such things as who they were working with while they completed the activity, what they determined, where the objects were located, when the activity took place, and what they thought about the activity and why they thought it was a positive activity or a negative activity, and an interesting way to include mathematics and measurement and technology. This simple Find It lesson plan is a great way for students to practice their communication skills. They're able to collaborate with a partner on a short-term activity. They're actively using technology and apps as they engage in the activity and try to solve the Find It activity. They're also using their math skills to measure the various dimensions of objects. It's a great way for them to practice recording data on a spreadsheet. And collaboratively, the students work towards a common goal and are able to achieve the goal. And this is a nice, simple way for students to find and achieve success in the classroom. Here's another idea and a way that you can allow for students not just to be consumers of information, but also to be designers. So the first time you use the Measure app, you, the teacher, created the dimensions and did all of the prep work. What if the next time you use the app, you allow the students to find the dimensions and create the activity? This is a similar strategy to making flashcards, where the students decide on what to include in the flashcards and then make decisions for themselves. Using the Measure app allows students to engage in different design level thinking, think critically about the types of items to include in their Find It activity, and to make some choices for themselves. Another lesson plan activity that you can complete when working with the Measure app is one with estimation. So students will find the Measure app on their devices, and this time they're going to estimate it. So the teacher would create a chart with various dimensions of classroom objects, and the students would look around the classroom and write down their best guesses as to which of the objects closely match the dimensions listed on the chart. Then the students work in pairs using the Measure app and measure the various objects. The students compare the measurements to determine if their estimates were accurate. This activity can be done a variety of times, and each time the students practices and estimates, they'll get better at it and improve their skills and their ability to estimate objects. Here's an example of a completed estimation chart. You can see it's been filled out. The height, the width, and the depth of each of the objects has been completed. In the guess column, that was the guesses made by the students of what they thought it was. And then in the last column was the actual object that matched each of the dimensions listed. So it's easy enough to do this in the classroom with your students. This concludes my webinar on augmented reality measuring app in elementary teaching. I hope I shared with you a couple of ideas that you see that you can easily use in the classroom to integrate technology and the measuring app and provide active learning strategies for your students.